My son said, "We're moving in." Then his wife treated me like the help. The first thing my son said when he arrived at my front door that night wasn't hello. It wasn't, "Dad, how are you?" It wasn't even an apology for showing up without calling. He stood beneath the porch light with his wife beside him, 2 suitcases at their feet, and a look on his face that told me something had already gone terribly wrong. "Dad," he said, "we need to stay here for a while." I stared at him. Then I looked past his shoulder. A large SUV was parked in my driveway. The rear hatch was wide open. There were boxes inside. Dozens of them. I looked back at my son. "How long is a while?" He hesitated. His wife answered for him. "Until we get back on our feet." Something about the way she said it bothered me. Not because I didn't want to help my son. I would have given him the last pound in my bank account if he'd needed it. But there was something in her voice. Something that sounded less like a request, and more like a decision that had already been made. I stepped aside. "Come in." My son gave me a relieved smile. His wife walked past me without saying thank you. She pulled her suitcase into my hallway. Then, another. Then she turned around and looked at my living room. "Okay," she said. "We'll need to rearrange some things." I thought I'd misheard her. "Excuse me." She smiled. "Nothing major. Just making the space work better." I closed the door. That was the moment everything changed. I just didn't know it yet. My name is Arthur Bennett. I'm 68 years old. And for 39 years, I lived in the same house with my wife, Eleanor. She passed away 5 years ago. The house was the last thing we had built together. Every room carried a memory. The scratches on the kitchen floor came from when our son, Michael, was 6 years old and decided to race his bicycle through the back door. The dent in the hallway wall came from the time I tried to carry a new sofa inside by myself. And the old wooden chair beside the living room window. That was Eleanor's. She sat in it every evening. Even after her illness became serious. Even when she was too weak to walk around the house. That chair stayed beside the window because she loved watching the sunset. I couldn't bring myself to move it. After she died, I began sitting there sometimes. Not because I wanted to pretend she was still alive. But because the house felt less lonely when I sat in the place where she had spent so many evenings. My son knew that. Or at least, I thought he did. That first night, Michael and his wife, Vanessa, took over the guest room. I carried their bags upstairs. Vanessa followed behind me, looking around as though she were inspecting a hotel. "This room gets good sunlight," she said. "Yes. We'll probably need a small desk here." "Probably. And we'll need to organize the closet." I stopped halfway up the stairs. "Organize it?" She looked at me. "There's a lot of your old stuff in there." I looked at my son. He was staring at his phone. "Michael." He looked up. "Yeah, Dad. Everything okay?" He forced a smile. "Yeah. Just some financial problems. Nothing permanent." I wanted to ask more. But he looked exhausted. So I nodded. "Get some sleep." I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen at 7 and found Vanessa standing beside the refrigerator. She was holding a notebook. "Good morning," she said. "Morning. I made a schedule." I blinked. "A schedule? For the house?" I laughed. I honestly thought she was joking. She wasn't. She handed me the notebook. On the first page was a list. Morning breakfast. Cleaning duties. Laundry schedule. Bathroom rotation. Quiet hours. Guest policy. I stared at it. "What's this?" "Our household system." I looked at my son. Michael suddenly became very interested in his coffee. Vanessa pointed at the page. "I figured since we're all going to be living together, we should have some structure." "That's sensible." She smiled. Exactly. I kept reading. Then I reached the bottom. My name was written beside several tasks. Breakfast preparation, kitchen cleaning, laundry pickup, grocery shopping. I looked up. Vanessa. Yes. Why is my name next to all these? She frowned. Because you're home most of the day. There was a long silence. I own this house. She smiled again. Of course you do. That answer somehow made things worse. I closed the notebook. Right. Michael finally spoke. Dad, don't make a big deal out of it. I looked at my son. I didn't make a big deal. Not then. I didn't know that silence would become the biggest mistake of my life. Within a week, things began changing. My coffee machine disappeared from the counter. Vanessa said it took up too much space. My favorite mugs were moved to a cupboard I couldn't reach without standing on a stool. The thermostat changed. The Wi-Fi password changed. The living room furniture moved. Then one afternoon, I came home from the supermarket and found two strangers carrying my wife's chair toward the garage. I dropped my shopping bags. Stop. The men froze. Vanessa appeared behind them. Oh, Arthur. I looked at her. Why are they moving Eleanor's chair? She sighed. We talked about this. No, we didn't. It's outdated. I stared at her. It's my wife's chair. I know. Then why is it going into the garage? She folded her arms. Because we're making the living room more modern. I turned to Michael. Son. He stood near the stairs. He didn't say anything. That silence hurt more than Vanessa's words. Michael. He finally looked at me. Maybe we can put it back later. Later. Dad, we're just trying to make the house comfortable. I looked around. My house. My wife's house. Our memories. And somehow I was the one being asked to compromise. I watched the chair disappear through the garage door. That evening, I sat alone in the kitchen. For the first time, I wondered whether my son had come home because he needed help, or because he believed I was too old to stop him. The next morning, I woke at 6. I made coffee. Then I heard Vanessa shouting from upstairs. Arthur. I walked to the hallway. Yes. Why is the washing machine running? Because I'm doing laundry. Not at this hour. I stared at her. It's 6:30. Michael and I are sleeping. I thought your schedule said mornings were for household chores. She stared at me. I stared back. Then I smiled. Did I misunderstand? She didn't answer. Michael appeared behind her. Dad. I raised my hands. Relax. Then I walked away. Something had changed. I had finally started pushing back. But I wasn't ready for what happened next. 3 days later, I returned home to find my garage door open. Michael's car was inside. My truck was parked outside. He had taken my parking space. I walked into the kitchen. Michael. Yeah. Why is my truck outside? He didn't look up. Vanessa needs the garage. She has a car. I know. Then why? He sighed. Dad, it's temporary. That word. Temporary. They used it for everything. The furniture. The schedule. The parking space. The chair. Everything was temporary. Except somehow, their control. That seemed permanent. A few days later, I had a visitor. My neighbor, Samuel, had lived beside me for almost 25 years. He was a retired police officer. He had a habit of noticing things without asking questions. That afternoon, he found me sitting in the garage beside Eleanor's chair. The tarp was pulled back. I was staring at the worn fabric. Samuel stood at the entrance. That's not where I remember that chair. No. Everything all right? I shrugged. Family. He nodded. That explains nothing and everything. I laughed. Samuel walked over. How long are they staying? I don't know. How long do they think they're staying? I looked at him. That's a better question. He nodded. Then he said something I wouldn't forget. Arthur, people rarely take control of a house by force. I waited. They start by convincing you that you're being unreasonable for wanting to keep control. I looked toward the house. Through the window, I could see Vanessa rearranging things in my kitchen. Samuel continued. First they move your chair. He pointed toward the garage. Then your furniture. He looked at the house. Then your routines. He paused. And one day you wake up wondering why you're asking permission to sit in your own living room. I didn't answer. Because he was right. A week later, Vanessa hosted a dinner. She didn't ask me. She informed me. We're having people over tonight. Who? Friends. How many? Not many. 7 people arrived. They filled my living room. I stayed upstairs until I needed to get something from the garage. When I walked through the kitchen, a man I had never met looked at me. Hey, he said. I stopped. Hello. He looked at Vanessa. Then at me. Is this the caretaker? The room went quiet. I looked at Michael. My son had 3 seconds. 3 seconds to say, "That's my father. This is his house. He lives here." Instead, he looked away. Vanessa laughed nervously. Oh, that's Arthur. Just Arthur. Not Michael's father. Not the owner of the house. Just Arthur. I smiled. I'm the owner. The man's face went pale. Vanessa's smile disappeared. I walked upstairs. That night, I sat on my bed for a long time. I looked at a photograph of Eleanor. You'd know what to do, I whispered. But the photograph remained silent. The truth came 2 nights later. I woke at around midnight. I was walking toward the bathroom when I heard voices from Michael's bedroom. I wasn't trying to listen. At least that's what I told myself. Then I heard Vanessa. We can't keep pretending this is temporary. Michael answered quietly. I know. We need to talk to him. About what? You know exactly what. Silence. Then Vanessa spoke again. The house. My hand tightened around the hallway railing. Michael said something I couldn't hear. Vanessa's voice became sharper. He won't live here forever. I stopped breathing. Michael whispered. Vanessa. What? Don't. I'm being realistic. He's my father. And we're drowning. Silence. Then she said the words that changed everything. We need him to sign. My heart began pounding. Michael didn't answer. We need the house, Michael. Stop. You know what this place is worth. Stop. We could sell it, clear the debt, and start over. I stepped backward. The hallway seemed suddenly cold. Michael's voice broke. I'm not putting Dad out. Vanessa replied. Then convince him to move. I returned to my bedroom. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table. I stared at Eleanor's photograph. Then I picked up my phone. There was one person I hadn't spoken to in years. A solicitor named Helen Porter. I called her. Arthur. Hello, Helen. Is everything all right? I looked toward the hallway. No. There was silence. Then she asked, do you need to discuss the trust? I closed my eyes. Yes. I had created the trust after Eleanor died. At the time, I wanted to make things easier for Michael. I never imagined I'd need it to protect myself from him. Helen arranged a meeting. That afternoon, I drove to her office. I brought photographs, messages, receipts, the household schedule, everything. Helen read through it carefully. Then she looked at me. Arthur, do you believe your son intends to harm you? No. Do you believe his wife is trying to pressure you? Yes. Do you believe your son is allowing it to happen? I hesitated. Yes. She nodded. Then you need boundaries. I asked her the question that had been haunting me. Can they take my house? She looked directly at me. Not without your consent. I exhaled. The house was protected. But something else wasn't. My relationship with my son. Helen helped me understand something. The trust protected the property. It didn't protect my heart. That was something I would have to do myself. I went home. Another delivery truck was waiting outside. Vanessa met me at the door. Perfect timing. For what? We need you to sign these. She handed me papers. I looked at them. What's this? Nothing complicated. I read the first page. It was a renovation proposal. I looked up. You're renovating my house? Our house. I folded the paper. No. Her face changed. What? I said no. Michael came downstairs. Dad. I held up my hand. No. Vanessa stared at me. You can't keep treating us like we're strangers. I looked at her. You treated me like a servant in my own home. Her mouth opened. No words came out. Michael looked ashamed. I walked away. For the next month, I became very calm. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I simply watched. And the more I watched, the more they revealed. Vanessa began measuring rooms. She contacted contractors. She discussed knocking down walls. She told friends they were settling in permanently. Michael said nothing. Every evening, I documented everything. Helen told me to remain patient. Let them talk, she said. Eventually, people reveal what they're planning. She was right. The biggest reveal came in June. Vanessa walked into the kitchen holding a stack of invitations. We're having a family gathering. For what? She smiled. Independence Day. At my house. Our house. I didn't correct her. She continued. Everyone will be here. Everyone. Your relatives. My family. Friends. Then she smiled. And the solicitor. I froze. What solicitor? The one handling the transfer. Michael walked into the room. His face went white. Vanessa. She turned. What? You said you wouldn't. She frowned. Wouldn't what? Michael looked at me. Dad. I waited. He looked terrified. Vanessa interrupted. There's no point delaying this anymore. Delaying what? She looked at me. The house. I said nothing. She smiled. Once everyone is together, we'll finally get the paperwork completed. Michael whispered. Vanessa, stop. She ignored him. We've already discussed everything. I nodded slowly. Have you? Yes. Good. She smiled. I smiled back. Then let's have a family gathering. She looked surprised. You're not angry? No. I folded the invitation. I think it'll be perfect. That was the first time I saw fear in my son's eyes. He knew something had changed. He just didn't know what. The 4th of July arrived. By noon, my backyard was full. Children were running around. Family members were eating. People were laughing. Vanessa moved through the crowd like she was hosting the event. She gave tours. She talked about renovations. She described the future kitchen, the new living room, the wall she wanted removed. Everyone listened. I said nothing. Michael stood near the barbecue. He looked miserable. My neighbor Samuel came over. You ready? I looked at him. No. He smiled. Good answer. At 2 o'clock, A car pulled into the driveway. Helen stepped out. She carried a leather folder. Vanessa saw her. Her face lit up. Helen. She hurried over. We're so glad you're here. Helen smiled politely. Good afternoon. Vanessa pointed toward the house. We're finally going to settle everything. Helen looked at me. I nodded. She understood. Vanessa turned to the family. Arthur has agreed to transfer the property. Silence. I didn't move. Michael looked at me. Dad. I stepped forward. No. Vanessa's smile disappeared. What? I haven't agreed to transfer anything. She laughed nervously. Arthur, don't do this now. I've been doing this for months. She looked around. Everyone is here. Yes. Your family is here. Yes. The solicitor is here. Yes. She lowered her voice. Don't embarrass me. I looked at her. Embarrass you? I turned toward Helen. Would you like to explain? Helen opened her folder. Vanessa suddenly looked nervous. Helen spoke calmly. The property is held in a trust. Vanessa's face changed. What? The house cannot be transferred without Mr. Bennett's approval. But, Helen continued, more importantly, Mr. Bennett has no obligation to leave this property. Vanessa stared at me. Michael closed his eyes. Helen placed several documents on the table. Then she placed photographs beside them. The chair in the garage. The household schedule. The furniture deliveries. The renovation plans. The messages. One message read, "We need him to sign before he changes his mind." Another, "Once the house is ours, we can sell it." The crowd became silent. Vanessa looked at Michael. Where did these come from? Michael didn't answer. Helen placed down another document. These are copies of communications regarding the proposed transfer. My sister picked up one page. Her face changed. Michael. He finally spoke. She's telling the truth. Vanessa stared at him. What are you doing? Michael looked at me. His eyes were filled with tears. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't answer. He stepped forward. I should have stopped her. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Michael. He pulled away. No. She froze. Michael looked around at our family. I should have stopped this the first night. His voice cracked. When she gave Dad that stupid schedule. I looked down. Michael continued. When she moved Mum's chair. His eyes filled. When that man called Dad the caretaker. He looked at me. I should have said something. I finally spoke. Why didn't you? Michael swallowed. Because I was afraid. Of what? Of losing my marriage. I nodded. And you were willing to lose your father instead? He began crying. I didn't think it would go this far. I looked at him. That's the problem. I pointed toward the house. Things don't go this far in one day. Everyone was listening. They happened slowly. I looked at Vanessa. One small disrespect. Then at Michael. One silence. Then back at Vanessa. One decision made without asking. I shook my head. Eventually, the person who owns the house becomes the person who feels like a guest. My sister began crying. Vanessa stood completely still. Then she whispered. I was only trying to help. I looked at her. No. She flinched. You were trying to control. She looked down. I continued. And you weren't trying to help my son. I looked at Michael. You were trying to rescue your lifestyle. Michael wiped his eyes. I know. Then he said something I didn't expect. We're in debt. The family became quiet. Michael explained everything. The failed business. The credit cards. The loans. The missed payments. Vanessa's lost clients. Their growing financial problems. They had come to my house because they were desperate. But desperation had turned into entitlement. And entitlement had turned into a plan. Michael looked at me. I thought if we could get the house. He stopped. I finished the sentence for him. You thought everything would be fixed. He nodded. I understood. I had been desperate before. I'd known what it was like to wonder how the mortgage would be paid. I'd worked extra shifts. I'd skipped meals. I'd worn the same work boots until the soles nearly fell off. But I had learned something. You don't solve your problems by destroying someone else's peace. I walked toward the garage. I returned carrying Eleanor's chair. Michael stared at it. I placed it beside the window, exactly where it had always been. Then I turned to him. I want you to leave. His face fell. Dad. I said I want you to leave. Vanessa looked furious. Michael looked broken. Then I added, but I don't want you to fail. He stared at me. I continued, I'll help you find somewhere affordable. Vanessa looked surprised. Why? I looked at her. Because I'm your father. Then I looked at Michael. Not your bank. Not your servant. Not your enemy. Your father. Michael began crying. I placed my hand on his shoulder. You can come back here. He looked up. Really? For dinner? A tiny smile appeared. Not to move in. He laughed through his tears. Okay. And you don't get to make the rules. He nodded. Okay. I looked at Vanessa. And neither do you. She lowered her eyes. The family gathering ended quietly. The following week, Michael and Vanessa moved out. This time, there were no arguments. No demands. No schedules. Just boxes. Michael carried most of them himself. Before he left, he walked into the garage. He returned carrying Eleanor's chair. He brought it into the living room. Then he placed it beside the window. The same spot. He stood there. I'm sorry. I looked at him. I know. He nodded. Then he left. 3 months passed. One Sunday afternoon, someone knocked on my door. I opened it. Michael stood there. He was holding a small toolbox. The old kind. He smiled. I fixed your porch light. I looked up. The light was working. Thank you. He hesitated. Do you have enough food for 2? I smiled. Depends. On what? Whether you're staying for dinner. He laughed. I am. I stepped aside. Then come in. We ate at the old table. The one Eleanor had chosen. The one Vanessa had called outdated. Michael told me about his new job. His debt repayment plan. His apartment. His struggles. This time, I listened. And this time, he talked. Months later, I received a letter from Vanessa. She apologized. She admitted she had crossed every boundary. She admitted she had confused generosity with weakness. She said she had treated my home as an opportunity instead of understanding that it was someone's life. I read the letter twice. Then I put it away. I didn't forgive her immediately. Forgiveness takes time. Trust takes longer. But eventually, I replied. I told her I accepted her apology. I also told her something else. The boundaries would remain. The house would remain mine. The trust would remain untouched. And Eleanor's chair would remain exactly where it belonged. Because forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means choosing not to live in anger. Today, the house is quiet again. My coffee mugs are back where I like them. The photographs are on the refrigerator. My wife's chair sits beside the window. And sometimes, on Sunday afternoons, Michael comes over. We fix things. We talk. Sometimes we sit in silence. The relationship isn't exactly what it was before. Maybe it never will be. But it's honest now. And I've learned something I wish I'd understood sooner. Family doesn't mean allowing people to walk over you. Love doesn't mean surrendering your dignity. And helping someone doesn't mean handing them control of your life. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is tell them no. Sometimes you have to close the door. Not because you hate someone, but because you finally understand that your home, your peace, and your self-respect matter too. My son once arrived at my door with 2 suitcases. He thought he was moving in. His wife thought she was taking control. But neither of them understood something. A house is made of walls and windows. A home is made of memories. And when someone tries to take away the memories that matter most, you have every right to stand up and say, "This is where I draw the line." And sometimes, that line is exactly where a broken family finally begins to heal.